results are in. We have calculated the top races of the season. We finally did it. And we've also got our top 3 moments of the season. This is Into the Chicane, a Formula One podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Channing Apodaca.
I'm Brandon Wood.
Hi, Brandon.
How's it going?
It's going well. It's going good. How long did it take you to sit down and go through all the races that you actually went through? And how many did you watch?
I went through highlights of every single race, every single sprint race. Took me a few days of sitting down for a little bit here, a little bit there, and just kind of making notes as I went along. But I made it through. I recapped the entire 2023 season.
God damn.
And yeah, I think now looking back at it, I think we did a pretty good job. And as we went along and compiled this list, I think we got it pretty close. So
pretty close. I got a little bit of a shakeup. I didn't do as due diligence as you did, I guess. I watched definitely like
somehow I'm not surprised.
The top 5 I watched, and then races that I was pretty sure would be in contention for honorable mentions. So the way we're gonna do this, we have our top 5 races of the season each, and then we're going to give some honorable mentions, and then we're going to break down our top 3 moments of the season. I got all my notes. Look at how bad my handwriting is.
It's a lot.
It is. Dude, I was doing this, and I was like writing everything down, and I haven't written on paper in a while, I guess, and I was watching my handwriting. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is horrible. And it reminded me of when I was buying my first car, and you were there with me. Do you remember that? The Nissan dealership.
And you just sign your name or something.
I was like signing something, and I was like, "Man, my handwriting's bad." And you literally looked up, and it's like scarred in my memory. And you were like, "Maybe you should just slow down." I don't know why that's like stuck with me. It hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt. All right, let's jump right into it. We got our top 5 races of the season. These are individual. We didn't settle on these together, right?
No.
The way that we normally do.
So I was just going to go off of our list that we had, and then kind of modify it from there. So coming in at number 5, we had Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this, although it was a good race, there was a little bit of chaos. There were some good battles. We saw Red Bull clinch Constructors' Championship, but I feel like it wasn't as exciting as some of the other ones were. So I feel like it might have to be bumped out top 5. And I'm kind of feeling like, for me, it's a toss-up between, I feel like it's got to be Monza.
Monza for you?
Monza for me because of just that. I mean, it was a really big weekend for Carlos Sainz. Ferrari unleashed all the stops. We saw a great battle between the teammates. For me, that was just altogether like such a fun weekend.
Wow. Since you mentioned Monza for me doesn't even crack the top 5. I have Monza as my very last honorable mention.
Interesting.
So I'll just give my honorable mention since you mentioned that one. I wrote down for Monza. I wrote Carlos. But by lap 15, that was done because I wrote that down because Carlos defended Max over and over again for 15 straight laps in the exact same way, but for only 15 laps, and then it was kind of done. And we got Checo with a beautiful pass through the chicane where they say you can't pass, and then the rest was kind of bland. It wasn't until lap 47 through 51 that the Ferraris put on a show, which was fun, and I thought they had to do. But other than that, Monza was good, but not great. And then Max took the win streak there. He took the 10-race win streak at Monza. So it was a good race, but it didn't crack my top 5. It got my very last honorable mention. In 5th place, 5th best race of the year, I got Brazil moving up the charts.
Oh, yeah, that was going to be my other one. That was a good race. There was that race featured one of my favorite moments of this season. So I'll save it for later, but
nice.
Definitely notable there.
So Brazil, I got a DNF from Chuck on lap 1. Lando with a brilliant start off the line from fourth into
Mhm.
second. He puts a little bit of pressure on Max going into turn one. You got Alex Albon and K-Mag hitting the wall on lap one. Daniel Ricciardo almost killed by a stray tire. That was exciting.
That was wild, yeah.
Yeah, we had a red flag restart. I wrote down red flag restart at Interlagos. Okay. Anytime you can get another start at Interlagos. So we got 3 starts in this race. We had the sprint, we had the start, and then we got ourselves a beautiful little red flag restart with Lando in P2. Oh my God, sex me up. And then Lando chased Max that entire race. It was one of the closest finishes that anybody has finished to Max, I believe. Other than Las Vegas and Coda, this was one of the closest finishes that we had to Max. And then we had Checo versus Alonso on the line. Beautiful. What else? Oh, I wrote down, because of this race, this was like a real premier race for Lando, I think. And it showed that he is going to be a true challenger in 2024. So Interlagos, usually my top race of the year, you know, because of the way that this year shook out, because of some of the crazy on-track shit with just like chaos and drama and then Max dominance, it fell back a little bit here. I wrote down one thing. Because of the Max dominance that happened this year, I wrote down that 2023 was all about small moments. You know, you didn't have these like epic race-long battles that we had in like 2021 between Max and Lewis, or, you know, Bottas and so in 2020. It was all about finding little moments, little highlights, and so that's what we got to kind of look for in these races. And I thought Brazil proved that for a 5th place. You know, Max versus Lando definitely for a little while, and then Checo Alonso on the line. Beautiful pass by the Grandmaster.
Not as many dramatic finishes this season as we might hope for. So having one here was definitely fun to see. So
also, this is the story of the season, but not a lot of battles for first. So you got to kind of take these little 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place battles where you can get them. So who'd you have in P4?
So in P4, on our list originally, we had Australia, but I felt like after reviewing the tapes, needed to do a little switcheroo here. So in 4th place, I've got Zandvoort.
You're not going to believe this.
You have the same?
I have the exact same. And we had Zandvoort at number 1.
For a long time.
Yeah.
For most of
the year, it stayed at number 1. So mentioning Australia, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that was heavily influenced by the fact that there was so many overtakes. The rain and all the chaos really caused a lot of that action.
It was one of those chaotic races. Let me check through my documents here. Where do I have Zandvoort? I know I wrote some shit down about it. Oh, there it is. So you mentioned Australia. I actually relegated Australia from 4th to 7th in an honorable mention position. So anything outside of the top 5 is just an honorable mention, but that gets my 2nd place honorable mention. But Zandvoort, dude, Dutch Grand Prix. I have to say, to start off, watching the highlights, you forget what an amazing track Zandvoort is. It is such a fucking cool track. I could not believe rewatching these highlights that it had been off the calendar for so many years, because it came back, 2021?
I believe so.
It was gone from like the 70s or the 80s all the way up until 2021 when they, really started throwing Max his bone. How has it been gone so long? It's such a cool track. It's a little thin for a modern day F1 car. Not a whole lot of overtaking opportunity in regular conditions, probably. But turn 3, Jesus Christ, dude, that banking left. Oh my God, sex.
Yeah.
Everybody loves it except Daniel Ricciardo, I think.
Yeah, and the moment where Max squeezed in on the inside around Pierre, that was pretty crazy. And yeah, I mean, you hate to be make light of someone getting hurt, but Daniel Ricciardo getting hurt there was kind of a big story, and was
a big moment,
part of the season. So
I think it's going to be a bigger thing for some other F1 fans and F1 pundits than it was for me, and I feel bad for Daniel Ricciardo, but I was actually I don't want to say happy because that's a terrible thing to say. I wasn't happy that he broke his wrist, but my excitement for getting Liam Lawson in surpassed my sadness for losing DR. But the Dutch Grand Prix, good racing, but also provided some of that chaos that 2023 kind of like encapsulated. Heavy rain on lap 1. Everybody starts on slicks, and halfway through the first lap, there's a torrential downpour that made drivers just try and stick it out. So they were just going not even to race, but just to stay on track. And you can see a lot of those guys, like Oscar Piastri, had a big moment in the final sector where you got to give this guy his flowers, give him kudos. He really was able to keep this thing on track. Fernando moved up 3 positions. About half the drivers stayed out on slicks, and half the drivers stayed out or went in for intermediates. And because it was like this weird rain on, rain off type thing where a lot of the teams were trying to predict that the rain was going to stop. So they stayed out on slicks, and you had half the grid on intermediates, half the grid on slicks, and it looked, pace-wise and with the tire grid on the screen, it looked like 2 completely different series. You had some guys flying, some guys like puttering around. It looked like an endurance race.
Yeah, definitely. With the quickness that the weather came on, it definitely made it so that you had to just make a decision and go for it.
Yeah.
And hope that you were on the right side of that decision.
This was a big team race right here. And then, like so many different times this season, so many different times this season, Logan Sargent ends up in the wall. You had Liam Lawson pitted 4 times by lap 52 of 72 in that race. 4 different pit stops. So this was just like like I just said, a chaotic team race. A lot of strategy, getting turned on, getting turned off, and then you had Checo off into the gravel trap on inters in the heavy rain. So the inters weren't even doing enough work there. That's how much rain was happening. So nice and chaotic. That's number 4 for us. You got anything else to say on Zandvoort?
No,
The Dutch Grand Prix.
We're looking forward to seeing it next year back on the beach.
Me too.
Yeah, race on the beach is always cool.
If I'm gonna plan to go to Europe to go see a race, that might be one of them. Like that's how cool of a fucking spot Zandvoort is. I don't know why I needed to emphasize that with an F word. So number 3, where you at?
Yeah, number 3 on our list we have Las Vegas, and I'm sticking with this. I feel like it was a very fun race. There was a lot of hype. The weekend started out not on a great foot, but the racing on the Saturday night, I wanted to say Sunday, but Saturday night ended up being well worth it. One of my favorite battles of the year. Seeing Charles take the lead and battle both Red Bulls for it was really great.
Yeah, super fun stuff. For me, number 3, I have got Singapore.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, we had a little bit of excitement at the start. Max did get past Carlos in a safety car on old tires. He ends up then get eaten up because they went long on those hard tires. And this was after Max, he had started like P10. I forget. He started in the back.
In Singapore, yeah.
Yeah. Not in the back, but like maybe middle of the pack somewhere. And then I think it was like a nice little battle between a couple of Mercedes and some Ferraris before Max got around Carlos in the safety car. I'm reading off of my notes, and they're all over the place, so sorry if my timeline's a little bit off. Good battle between Checo, Alonso, and Ocon, a 3-way battle. Then we got Ocon DNFing after having like a really solid race himself. Sad for him. Mm-hmm. George versus Lando with a little bit of help from Carlos. Remember that hole?
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, George getting a little too overzealous at the end and flipping the wall in dramatic fashion.
Yep, I got George in the wall with a little smiley face. As much as that sucks for him, it's just nice. I don't know why to see George have to eat his own shit, But it was great, and that was the only race this season that a Red Bull car didn't win. So that was a big moment. Not only was it epic for the season, You had that beautiful, beautiful individual effort by Carlos Sainz to play DRS Chicane with 3 cars behind him. It involved 2 Mercedes and a McLaren, and brilliant, brilliant driving from him. You had George into the wall, and then, the fact that we had a different winner. It's just some beautiful on-track battles, like up and down, I think all the way up into P10. And then you had a great effort by Max to get up into P5, is where I think he finished, maybe P4, after George's crash. I think he finished P4. So nice.
And a night race, too.
And a night race. Like, you can't beat that. I mean, the Singapore track is gorgeous. So
yeah, Max got 5th. So
5th?
Yeah.
It was Carlos, Lando, Lewis. Checo? Charles. Okay. So Max slots up a couple more because of George. That was my 3.
What's your number 2?
My number 2, I've got the Japanese Grand Prix, Japan.
Oh, okay.
And this was we had this where, 5th?
5th. And I personally, to open the segment, said that I felt like it was we had rated it a little high. So for you to say it comes in at number 2, I want to hear where your arguments can be.
Just watching back a lot of the on-track battles, like I thought from a pure racing standpoint that Suzuka was just one of the best of the year. So you got in qualifying, which I didn't take a whole lot of notes for qualifying, but I did this one because he had Logan Sargent in the gravel trap to start the weekend off again in Q1, overdoing it, when I believe both Williams looked good going into this weekend. Off the line, you got 2 McLarens charging straight towards Max. Max fights back. This, to me, was one of the most brilliant moments of the season. The 2 McLarens on either side of Max Verstappen, and he fended them both off so viciously, like literally one after the other, that it made me question that dog in Lando, which I don't like to do because Lando backed off really hard, but that's what Max does, right? Let's see. You got Max fighting back. Lando moves up to P2, I think from P4, somewhere like that. And there was a crash in the middle.
4 or 5, yeah.
Yeah, you got a crash in the midfield. There was a beautiful battle between Yuki and Liam. That was the first time we saw them go wheel to wheel as teammates. Liam overtook him. I thought that was brilliant. I loved it. You had Lewis versus George 2 times. You got George Russell crying.
That was a big battle.
Yeah,
I remember
multiple times. And then that was the race where George started going, are we teammates or are we racing against each other? So anytime I get George Russell tears, I love it. This was the Checo Wreck-It Ralph race where he made contact 2 or 3 times. I think he hit K-Mag more than once. This is where Checo was boxed and then re-released in order to finish his lap to avoid a penalty. And then you got, at the very end of the race, you got George Russell getting overtaken 4 times in the last 11 laps. So 4 overtakes in the last 11 laps. That's beautiful. And some of them were easy overtakes. Some of them he tried to fight back. And then this was the race where Red Bull secured their Constructors' Championship. I love Japan. I'm actually unironically wearing my Japanese Grand Prix t-shirt right now. I've been wearing it for 4 days straight, so it doesn't really count. But I thought it was a great race. And the night we watched it, we were going apeshit, but we were also live streaming. We were boozing, so the hype was there. I hadn't really gone back and watched too much of it since I watched these highlights, and I think the hype was real. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a very fun race. That track is so great. I think I remember saying when we did the review podcast that I felt like it was a very good representation of the entire season.
Yes.
Just the way everything played itself out. Maybe in some cases a little bit exaggerated, like Checo's case, but very, very emblematic of the entire 2023 season.
It really was encapsulated in it, like everything you had. I mean, the only thing that we didn't get in Suzuka was crazy weather, but I mean, Checo's impatience, Max dominance, George tears, Red Bull championship, good on-track battles up and down. I loved that it was a good race for the McLarens because this was part of the redemption tour. Japanese, me gusta.
So
Who do you got it to?
my number two is Australia. For a
Wow.
long time, uh, we had it sitting right. Currently, it was a fourth. I think we had it as the top race for a
For
while
a while.
until
We had to get over the chaos.
December happened.
We had to get over the bias of, I guess we'll call it the bullshit bias, because that's what that race was. It was a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, but at the same time, watching back, like it was actually very enjoyable to see all of that chaos because it was like one thing after another. Like
Yeah.
it was just things were happening left and right. Wasn't really, saw some cars out of place. Wasn't necessarily like a good representation of everybody's performance throughout the season. It was very early on in the season, but it was it was very fun to
Yeah.
watch.
There was
Good street race, good track.
there was some fun stuff in it. Overall, I think the issue with Australia was that there was no grip. For whatever reason, nobody could find grip in this race because it was just people going off, people going too hard into turns, people locking up, and just causing what all this chaos was. But there was, a good moment where George overtook Max on lap 1 for P1. Leclerc, no grip, goes into the gravel trap from the middle of the pack. Alex Albon just completely lost it in one of the chicanes on his own. That caused, I think, the first red flag because of how much debris he spit up. George got his pit stop wrong during that. I don't know if you remember that, but he was leading the race. They decided to pit him under safety car. Less than a minute later, the red flag is announced, so he dropped back like 5 position. Ends up having an engine failure later that race anyways. I wrote down a little smiley face. There was almost major contact on the restart. Max nearly lost it. K-Mag goes off the road. And then later on in that race, K-Mag hits the wall, and that's where all the chaos ensued.
Yeah, we had the Alpines making contact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So much.
So it was literal carnage. So like for me, there wasn't a lot of great on-track moments, which is why I left it out of my top 5. But I left it in my my honorable mentions. But one other moment that I forgot about. I don't know if you remember this during the was it the first or the second restart? I forget. One of the restarts, all the cars got piled up. Remember how everybody was trying to space themselves out, and there was this giant pile up where cars were coming around a turn, and K-Mag ends up going off the track because he can't slow down in time. So it was just like anywhere you could find chaos, even in just like this little rolling restart type deal. If it was even a rolling restart, I don't remember. Chaos.
Exactly.
That's what Australia was. So normally not the favorite race of the season. It typically starts off the season, or it used to, and now I think it's round 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
3. I think it was 3
it's
or 4.
It's usually like a little warm up. Yeah. You know what I mean? Before we get to the heavy hitters and like Coda, Interlagos, and all that. But chaos ensued, and it proved to be one of the more exciting races of the season. So who do you have at number
1? I felt like just with how the season went, and how good the battles were up until the very end of the race. For me, number 1 has got to be Singapore.
Wow,
100%.
Nice.
Just Carlos being able to deliver the win, showing some brilliant racecraft. I mean, it just altogether was probably my most favorite race for sure.
I think any of like the top 3 from either of our lists can be arguably the best race of the season, or I mean, really top 5. This whole conversation I think could be argued. I actually almost had Singapore at my number 2. I had an arrow going back and forth with a question mark, and I had to just settle on Japan over Singapore just because of the on-track shit. Before I do my number 1, I'm going to give my last honorable mention, and that was Coda. I thought Coda was actually a much better race than I think the immediate response was. You had Lando up to first. He overtook in the first corner on lap 1. That track is really, really wide open. The whole race was pretty wide open. Lots of movement. Max climbed up. Lewis had a chance. Max and Lando went wheel to wheel all the way up until lap 28. It was one of those races where there was like genuine excitement of Lando potentially winning had they got their pit stop strategy right, which I think they went the safe route, and settled for a P2. I think had they left Lando out on mediums a little bit longer and let him put up a fight, he could have barely eked out a win, maybe. You had Lewis versus Lando, nice little battle late, and then the after race drama with Lewis and Charles there getting disqualified from that race. And then it was one of the rare races where Max only finished by a couple seconds. He finished 2 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton in this race. But my number one race of the season, I can't believe that this is where it's ended up. My number one race of the season was the Las Vegas Grand Prix. I know. The race that should never have been, the race that should have been trash, the race that almost didn't even happen because of all the bullshit, I think proved to be just a beautiful spectacle from practice to qualifying down to the literal very last lap. There was movement on this race the entire time. You had Leclerc versus Max on lap 1. Max ends up getting a penalty. There's low grip. Fernando goes off. Lando goes off. You got Oscar Piastri with a huge charge from P12. Makes himself competitive in P4 for the majority of the race. You got Williams becoming fish food. They started P5 and P6, their best to start in years, and they fall all the way back out of the points. You got Chuck overtaking for P1 on lap 16. When was the last time anybody overtook Max in the middle of a race?
Probably the first time it happened this season.
I think the first and only time that Max got overtaken in the middle of a race. And then we saw Max fucking go into George. They make contact. George gets a penalty. You love to see it. You got an Alpine team battle going on there in the middle of the pack. You got Checo with a huge charge from P12 all the way up into P3. And then we have a 3-way, almost 4-way battle for P1. If Oscar Piastri had a little bit better timing on a pit stop strategy, maybe a little bit more tire life or better control of his tires, he could have potentially been there right for P4. You got middle of the pack madness, battles up and down, and then that 3-way battle between Max, Checo, and Leclerc back and forth over a number of laps. And then, quite possibly, the greatest moment of the season with Chuck Leclerc overtaking Sergio Perez at the CVS turn on the very last lap, as many times in as 2 races that Checo lost position on the last lap. Unreal race. I thought it was great.
I mean, just the fact that we now have a famous CVS corner.
I love it.
I think. Yeah, so I agree with all that you said there. It was definitely a fun weekend. Looking forward to round 2.
Yeah, I can't wait for the next few years. I think it's only going to get better. I'm going to say this, though. My prediction for the Las Vegas Grand Prix overall, since it was announced, I thought that it was going to be the new Monaco. That's been my prediction. It's not Monaco. It doesn't have what Monaco's got, and I'm not saying that from a racing perspective. It outraces Monaco 1,000 times over, but like the glitz and the glam, the spectacle that Monaco is, it wasn't that. So if they want, if my prediction was going to be true, they have a lot of work to do, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Okay. On that note, perfect segue. My honorable mention for races,
please,
2023.
Give me as much honorable mentions as you got.
We, for pretty much the entirety of his existence in the 2023 season, had Monaco at the back of the grid. I personally want to give Monaco a honorable mention.
Wow.
I feel like it could potentially earn a place within the top 12, maybe 10. So I think looking back on it, it was definitely the classic Monaco, especially with this era of car that's a lot bigger, a lot wider, end up being very tight and chaotic on the opening laps. You can watch some of like the driver views from the opening lap, and it's just I can only imagine how nerve-wracking it was.
Yeah, I mean it's a driver's track, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, that and then there was tons of chaos. We saw rain come down just within like the last 15 laps of the race or so, which really threw a big curveball. We saw people going off left and right, doing 360s. Just to me, that was just a really fun fun race to watch, and I think it doesn't deserve to be at the back. I think it was a lot more exciting than we were willing to give credit for.
Yeah, I think I could probably give it another rewatch and give it its dues, but there are three moments from that race that stick out to me, and it was Max's last flying lap in qualifying. That was beautiful. It was brilliant. It was Esteban Ocon's podium performance kind of out of nowhere. And then it was Fernando's pit stop. Had he not made that last pit stop, you got Fernando Alonso winning the Monaco Grand Prix. No doubt about it. One missed call, and Max keeps that streak alive. So there you have it.
Right on.
Those are our top 5 races of the season.
Did you have any other honorable mentions, or to cover them all?
That was all of them. That was all my honorable mentions. I almost wanted to give Mexico an honorable mention just because it was better than we expect, but that doesn't get you in. That doesn't get you curious, you know?
Yeah, it was pretty. I mean, yeah, Mexico was a pretty memorable race for me just because of the whole Checo drama and him going out in the first turn, which makes it very sad. So,
which takes us right into our top 3 moments of the season.
Okay.
Are you ready for this? You have your top 3 moments of the season ready to go?
Yeah.
Right off the bat, you just said it. Number 3 for me was Checo's heartbreak in Mexico. I think he's kind of in a place where he's realized his role at Red Bull Racing. He's realized his place in Formula One, and I think his seat is a little bit in jeopardy. And I think he's got his main focus now is winning a Mexico Grand Prix. And he was gunning for it, and if he had just been a little less zealous on one turn, he might have been at least on the podium. Who knows if he was going to be able to overtake Max. He would have at least been in the slipstream and in a DRS zone, and given himself a shot. But because he wanted it so bad, he got so hungry, and he got so greedy on turn 1, he took himself out, and the entire country of Mexico weeps.
Yeah, I mean, he saw that window. He went for it, only to realize that it wasn't open.
It wasn't there. So, yeah, I mean, he said it himself, like, I'm going to go for it in this race. And then when I saw that window, I took it, and I think he even said I would do it again. So good on him, I guess. You want to see that sort of compete level. Fingers crossed that he's got that same energy going into 2024.
On Checo, my number 3 moment of the year, I got his battle with Fernando Alonso at Interlagos, and Fernando, just the defense of the year, just outplaying Checo with the DRS game and getting the edge on him at the very end. Although it did come down to the wire, that was just one of my favorite parts of the season. I mean, all season long, Fernando just showing just the highest class of racing skill, just all the little things to, I think was it in Zandvoort or so where he was, or it may have been Belgium, where he was during the sprint, he was driving over his starting position.
Oh, to lay down rubber?
Sunday, to lay down rubber to give himself extra traction. Just like all those little things throughout the year, he's just such a...
Yeah, he's 300 IQ.
Racing genius.
He really is. And it's like, it's almost this like little bit of evil genius, but fuck, man, that's 20 plus years of Formula One, coming into fruition. So I guess this is going to be a big shit on Checo greatest moments, because my number 2 is Chuck's overtake in Vegas, and I think I'm just going to combine it, and I'm just going to say Checo last lap losses, because Interlagos was a huge. I mean, it's the same thing. That was a beautiful battle between the two of them. So for me, my number 2 is just Checo getting overtaken on the last lap in Vegas and in Interlagos.
Yeah, that was mine as well.
I mean, that's what you want. You want a race to the line, and so that's, bam, right there. Number 2 for 100%. Me. What's your 1? Greatest moment
number
of
one.
the 2023 season for Brandon Wood. What was it?
I mean, I don't know. My order might be a little mixed up here, but definitely Fred Vasseur letting the Ferraris race the last few laps at Monza. To me, that was one of the best moments. Like, that was their weekend. They had put it all into that, and then for them to just say it, "Have it out, boys," was
That
just
was
like
fun.
so much fun to see happen. So
I love that too, and you're not going to believe this. My greatest moment also happened at Monza, but it was less exciting. My number one moment of the season was Max Verstappen winning 10 races in a row at Monza, / taking the win record for the season with 19 wins. I know it's boring. People don't want to hear it, but that's the story of the season. Max was the story of the season. Historic. He broke 2 records, the streak, and then the number of wins. And as much as you don't want to give him his credit, if you're one of those people out there, he's out racing even the best car that's ever been built. All you got to do is look at where his teammate finished in that exact same car, and it was more than 50% down from where he finished from a points perspective. Boring, maybe. Monumental and historic. You can't deny the young man. He is that Dutch lion, and he was the story of the season. So much of a story that he became a non-story. You know what I mean? We didn't even have to say who won the race.
Yeah, it became boring to talk.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if that's the story of the year, that's the story of the year, you know?
But, it opened us up to focusing on everyone else on the grid, further down, giving light to everyone else further down on the grid. So.
Yeah. Everyone had to get a little nibble at the table.
Yeah. Well, I guess now we can put the 2023 season to rest.
Yeah. So we'll be back with any news and notes. Maybe we'll have, I don't know, some breaking news. We're kind of in that little bit of a lull in between seasons right now.
Yeah. So we'll definitely be done until next year. And then we'll, I guess we have to wait until February for any preseason stuff to really come out.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, to wrap it up, is there anything that you feel like you learned that you in doing this podcast this year that you might not have learned otherwise? Do you feel like there's anything gained from doing this?
No.
Did you get anything out of this?
I got a lot of great F1 talk with you, a couple of our other buddies. It definitely forces us to put a keener eye on things. So that's good, I guess, from a fan perspective. I've learned that I'm not the sports broadcaster that I think I was trying to be at the beginning of this show, and I just enjoy mucking it up rather than trying to cover things from a technical perspective. I enjoy just talking about Formula One with friends, and I think that's what this podcast does.
Yeah, same. But I also personally have learned so much more about the technical stuff and just paying more attention and
you're the tech guy on the side on this show, 100%.
So yeah, so for me that was just, and also kind of, I wouldn't say being forced to, but just having that okay, we're going to be doing a podcast, so I got to make sure to
study
pay
up.
attention to everything. Was kind of it was kind of fun. It was kind of a good motivating factor to really soak in as much of the season as I could. So
yeah. I also learned that a bunch of our friends in our fantasy league are rats who don't adhere to their word.
Yeah, well, maybe next year we'll have to do things a little differently.
It's not gonna be a next year for the fantasy league.
Yeah, I guess so.
We'll see. All right, guys, for the final time, this is Into the Chicane signing off. Peace.
Peace.